Welcome to Smalltalk Daily for Monday, November 9th, 2009. This morning I wanted to go through a brief thing about memory settings. This came up a couple days ago on Twitter. Somebody asked me a question about this, and I thought it'd be useful to go through how to allocate more memory up front so that you don't run into problems when you're doing something. Give me an example. Let's say I wanted to scan this log file, and the log file in question is 375 megabytes. When I instantiate that into objects, it might well turn out to be 500-600 megabytes worth of memory being consumed. And if I take a quick look at my settings, system settings, you'll notice that if I go here to memory policy, you'll see that I have a couple of different things here, and let me explain what these mean. This is the upper bound on memory, meaning if I attempt to grow past that limit, it'll just fail. So I might conceivably want to bop that up, I might not. It depends. For this particular thing, if I'm reading one log file, probably not. If I was reading 2 or 3 and each one of them was 300 or 400 megabytes long, well, probably I'd need to upgrade it a little bit to maybe a gigabyte or 2 gigabytes, who knows. In any case, growth regime is the more interesting one. This one tells the system at what point to switch over from being oriented towards allocating new memory to trying to scavenge first. Notice it's set to 32 meg, which is pretty low. If I'm reading in a 300 meg file or I'm doing something else that's very memory intensive, it's probably not a good idea to have that ceiling set down at 32 meg, because what will happen is as soon as your system allocates up to 32, the first thing it'll try to do in every instance when it needs new memory is scavenge. And then after it fails to scavenge, because well, you're consuming that much memory, it'll then allocate. But you'll go through that wasted effort of attempting to scavenge first. So it might be a good idea to go ahead and do something like this. Say, well, you know what? Let's set this to 300, assuming I could type it. So let's set that to 300, and then you have to hit Make Current. At this point, you don't need to apply. Making Current makes that the current policy, and what that did is I just told the system, instead of defaulting to attempting to scavenge at 32 meg, now it'll attempt to scavenge only when I go over 300 meg. And you could set that at any point you want. You could set it down if you want your system to be a little lighter on memory. You could set it up if you want it to be heavier on memory. This is just the basics though. If you really need to go in heavy duty to memory stuff, what I want to show you is this. Class System, Browse, and let's find two classes. First, we're going to find class Memory Policy. This is the first one you should really look at. And it would behoove you to go ahead and read the entire comment in here and also look at the documentation in the system on this. The other one you want to find, let's go ahead and find class Object Memory. And this one, again, you want to read the whole class comment, read the documentation, and then you want to go to the class side and look at things like growing and shrinking memory and setting the low space conditions and a whole bunch of things you can change. The thing to keep in mind about this is that with memory policy, you can make those changes on the fly. You set those limits up or down, it'll change immediately. With object memory, many of the things you can do, you have to save the image before they take effect. So if you want to change the space sizes of the various things in the VM, which I've gone through in other screencasts, you need to do that, save the image, and restart. So depending on how severe your problem is and what you want to change, you can either do it on the fly with memory policy, or you can make the change and save your image in object memory. Another thing to keep in mind is there are ways with memory policy. Let's go back there, find class. Actually, let's look right in here in object memory. I bounced out. Let's find that class object memory again. One important thing here, if I want to find the method star memory install memory policy, notice there's a way to install a new memory policy. So if you had a situation where you wanted to create your own custom memory policy and install it in the system, this is how you do it. If you're going to do this, you want to make sure that you've read the documentation very carefully and understand how a new memory policy ought to work, because you're effectively doing brain surgery on the image, and if you do this wrong, you could end up with something that runs very, very badly. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with Smalltalk.